Hello and welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go through a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. This midweek episode will be going over the last two zones that are within the island, no, not the Isle of Dawn, the island of Kazagal? Yeah, I still can't remember the exact names of the actual island itself. Kazagal? Kazagal. It's something along them lines. But we will be looking at Hallowfall and Ajkahet. These are the third and fourth zones within this island. And in my honest opinion, this has the potential to be the best zone in the entire game of WoW. One of these zones is, anyway. But we will start with... do we go level order? You know what? Let's do it. Well, we'll start with the, in my opinion, best zone that has ever been introduced into World of Warcraft. Hallowfall. Now, as you are going from the Ringing Deeps into Hallowfall, you aren't going through this giant trench like you are from the Isle of Dawn into the Ringing Deeps. Instead, you're going through a very short passageway, and it opens up quite quickly. And the very first thing that you notice when you enter this zone and turn a slight corner to your right is a giant crystal. Now, this giant crystal, or I call it a crystal, but it's going to be referred to as Beladar, because that is what it is referred to as in the game. Now, Beladar is a magnificent sight. It is you're at the highest peak nearly of the entire zone, and you just see everything within your, like essentially your character's peripherals, or in your camera. Now, you see all of the little settlements, you see the prairie, which is at the very back of the zone from where you are, on this giant hill, very isolated. You see these flying, like balloons and stuff, or like flying machines. They are basically balloons, like dirigibles or whatever they're called. Dirigibles? You know, that sort of thing. But essentially, you are struck with how magnificent this zone is. This zone is underground, hundreds of feet, and yet you've just come from a place that is just mining and dirt and rubble and, you know, a shit show into something that is lush and vibrant and waterfalls everywhere, and there's an ocean underneath the world. How cool is that? There will be stuff to do with that. I will go over that, and that will be a bit spoilery. So just bear in mind. But this zone, the feel and the look as soon as you get into it is like none other. Okay? You do not enter a zone and be like, yes, this is insanely good. You don't get struck with any sort of wow factor. Now, if you look at all of the different zones that are lush and lovely and all of that, Val'Sharah, the way that you get there is you're simply flown into the middle of a town, and essentially you're surrounded by trees and stuff. Not really a, oh my god, this zone looks amazing moment. If you're looking at sort of Hyjal, you're just kind of flown there via a drake in Cataclysm leveling. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a lovely scenery, but you see firelands. You don't see anything else. You don't see the lushness of Nordrassil or anything like that. As for any sort of other lush zones, Grizzly Hills, again, you don't really see a lot. You can wander in via, Dragonblight or Howling Fjord, and you get hit with the nostalgic music, that iconic, like, Grizzly Hills music, which, if you have not heard, please go and listen to. Grizzly Hills music is amazing. But none of these zones, compared to what you first see, nowhere near compared to Hallowfall. I'm trying to think of any zones that you zone into. I think the best ones that they did was in Shadowlands, believe it or not, where you go from zone to zone from Oribos. So you start off going to Bastion, then Maldraxxus, and I think the last time I felt like that was when I went to Ardenweald, and when I flew back and forth from Ardenweald to Oribos and stuff like that. The sight of the Ardenweald tree and where the Covenant was always felt amazing to me, and this just takes it up another notch, 10 times more. As for the quests that are within Hallowfall, now the quests are very simple. They are based around... Okay, firstly, I'm going to give a sort of spoiler warning here, so if you don't want to know, please do check back at a later time. But there's your warning, so I'll give you a couple seconds to click off if you need to. And essentially, the questing is to do with the Arathi. Now, the Arathi are a group of humans, or sort of older generation of humans and high elves that lived within Azeroth, and essentially they weren't expected to be around anymore. So Anduin, who is the King of Stormwind technically, or should be still, he was named after a Anduin Lothar, and Lothar was an Arathi name, and Anduin Lothar was part of the Arathi. And the person that you're questing with is someone from that family lineage. It is a Favouring Lothar, and she is so cool. It's the first character, I believe anyway, that is an amputee within the game, and the way that they depict her and the quests that you do go over her sort of amputee-ness? No. Like her amputee disability, okay? And there are certain quests that are like, you go to her blacksmith, for example, and the blacksmith is working on a prosthetic for her. And she simply states, like, I don't need one. I've been training without, my right arm for years now, and the shield that you've made for it, I'll go into I'll go into the exact details of that in a second, but the shield that you've made for it, I've trained like years with this, and it will be tough just to retrain it all with a second arm. So as long as you can improve the shield, make it a bit sturdier, I'm fine. And it's a really cool sort of thing that they bring it up and they mention it, and they show like these smaller details that are had throughout the world, and it's not just, oh, this person's an amputee, oh, okay, cool, it's never mentioned in game again, that kind of thing. They build on it, and they show that there are relationships within the zone itself with regards to the person who is the amputee and the blacksmith who's been making prosthetics and trying to help them work around it and stuff like that. The shield part, now for her shoulder pad, essentially it's got a clip, and this clip is where you throw the shield onto. So essentially her right arm is just a shield, which is fucking cool, by the way. It is really, really cool. And yeah, it's just small things like that which are really fun to pick up on as you're questing through these zones. But I'm not going to go through the spoilers of the actual zone, campaign itself. I just like them sort of small things. And the quests within this zone as well, the side quests anyway, I'll give you a very good example. This is again a spoiler potentially, and no one knows what this is linked to, which makes it even better. But about 3/4 of the way through, you're killing these sort of Murloc evolutions, Kyola? I think they're Kyola or something like that. And essentially you loot a strange fish. This strange fish you put back into the water, and you do a couple quests for it, okay? And then the fish wants you to take it into deeper waters now that it's been, a bit...
Let's take a quick break.
Do you like video games, podcasts, and reminiscing? I'm actor, video game writer, and total sweetie pie Connor Savage McCabe, and on each episode of Call Me By Your Game, I sit down with a guest for an intimate look at a special game from their past. Did you and your dad beat Spyro the Dragon over the holidays? Or was Halo 4 the one thing that united your roommates during your senior year of college? Stories like these are what Call Me By Your Game is about. From video game content creator Janet Garcia to Hades voice actor Courtney Vinay's, I interview wonderful comedians and game industry friends about these memories. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts, and maybe someday you'll call me by your game.
Less sort of weakened, and what it turns out to be is a sort of squid or leviathan, like a baby leviathan essentially, and you get a whisper, and this whisper is very much very old goddy sort of whisper, where it's like, if you ever bring the light down here, like, I will basically just end you and stuff like that, and you know, thank you for your help, and I wouldn't want to see you, like, crushed beneath the waves, you know, that sort of cryptic stuff. And it's kind of terrifying. No one knows what it's related to. No one knows what these things are. And essentially, this is the ocean beneath the world. And it's just got giant leviathans and some sort of thing that is talking to you telepathically or putting words into your mind. It's a bit concerning and a bit uneasy. You feel a bit uneasy doing it, because when you talk to this fish, essentially it turns into this small leviathan, and you can see the drop off like into the fatigue zone of the water, and from that fatigue zone you see a giant leviathan rise out of it, and it is quite daunting for people who have a fear of sort of anything like deep ocean or anything like that. I knew that it was going to happen, because I go through Wowhead like during the betas, and you know, I read a lot of news about WoW and stuff, and I knew this was going to happen, and yet I still got a little bit uneasy about it. So, you know, it really can startle a few people, especially because it is very close to that drop, like into the fatigue zone of WoW, and it's just something that is terrifying, I'm not going to lie. So the quests are really good. There are some really flavorful quests within Hallowfall, and I would recommend doing as many as you can in this zone. As well as engagements. Like, engagements within the zone are plentiful. Throughout the questing, you'll get a lot of stay a while and listen moments. And these stay a while and listen moments are to do with Anduin mainly, Illyria, a couple others, but mainly them two characters. And they go over sort of, you know, the light and void, all that sort of shenanigans. Nothing too crazy, but they are always worth listening to, because of it's essentially how they're trying to tell the story in Warcraft now through these like stay a while and listens, because there's going to be some sort of you understand the turmoil or the fighting that is happening internally for these characters, and that's how they're trying to portray them through these stay a while and listens. So engagement wise in the zone, amazing as well. Honestly, Hallowfall, I'm really trying to think of other zones that come close to it. I don't think there is. If you're looking at story-wise, you're looking at stuff like Val'Sharah, which is always good. Ardenweald and Shadowlands as a whole, not too bad. But honestly, just the feel and the look of this zone is so gorgeous. It is magnificent. If you haven't seen it yet, please go through your leveling, and just when you're about to head to Hallowfall, take a second, turn up the music in the like options, and just head in there and take it in for a good minute or two, okay? Especially that crystal. Seeing that crystal as the very first thing when you enter the zone, you really need to take that in. It is so good, and they've done such a good job with this zone. It's, yeah, I'm going to say it is the best zone that they've ever made within the 20 years of Warcraft, and I don't think there is going to be a close contender for the look and feel of something. Now, obviously, you have the stuff like Teldrassil or Ashenvale or Grizzly Hills, anything with that sort of music and that vibe, great. But nothing has hit me more than going into this zone and just being like, yep, this is amazing. Without even doing a single quest, you get into that zone and then it's just suddenly, okay, the questing so far has been worth it just to see this place. That's how good it is. Okay, so please just chill in Hallowfall. You will not regret it for the rest of the expansion. As for Ajkahet, Ajkahet is a complete 180 in terms of Hallowfall. And not in terms of how good the zone is as a whole, in terms of the brightness and the colours used and stuff like that. So you're going from a bright, lush sort of underground world, essentially, where you have waterfalls and ocean, basically a bright star in the sky, almost literally, and you're going to dark sort of purple, greens, that sort of thing. And it's very kind of like marsh colours is the best way to describe it. You're walking through a marshland. That's kind of what I'm going to describe it as. So where do we start with Ajkahet? The feel and the look of it, as soon as you enter, you are going from something that is very bright, colourful, well lit, to something that is dark and gloomy and, meant to fill you with a sense of dread. And it does that. That is what the feel of the zone is meant to be. It's meant to be the depths of this sort of island, the island of Khazal-Gal. And essentially, you're looking at an empire that was once great. And we've dealt with the Nerubians before, who are just essentially spiders to us. And their sort of feel is very scary. It's meant to be scary. It's meant to fill you with this sort of impending threat almost, even just setting foot within this zone at the very start. It's that sort of thing. The look-wise at the start, again, could do a lot better. I think that you go from one extreme to the other, where you look into Hallowfall and you see Beladar and you see a giant open field and like a prairie at the top of a mountain, stuff like that, to the very first thing that you see within Ajkahet is something that is quite confined and claustrophobic. Now, it's maybe meant to feel like that because it's meant to almost trap you. These are spiders after all, so it would make a bit more sense if they're trying to trap you. So I think it does what it wants to very well. Personally, I don't like it, but that's because Hallowfall going into Ajkahet, you're not going to like it. Straight up you aren't, because the Hallowfall experience with what you've seen is a different story entirely. But I would still say that it does its job for what it wants to portray to the player. So looks-wise, I think that it does very well as the feeling of it. Quests. So the main quests happen... The start of it is a bit weird, and you're a bit all over the place. The bits... Now, there are going to be a few spoilery bits in here, so again, you've been warned. But the first few quests are very much based around these trolls and this black blood. Now, the black blood you obviously get a couple references to later on, but these trolls, or these like troll-looking creatures or race, are no longer to be found after the fact, and after you get to a certain point within the questing. Now, I haven't looked for them specifically, like quite in depth, but I would imagine there is a small questing hub for them somewhere within Ajkahet. So I need to do a bit more research and a bit more questing on the sidelines within Ajkahet. But for the main story quests, you're going through all of these different bits and bobs, and essentially you're trying to get connections within this place, and these connections are via Nerubians, which is a bit weird because you would think that the Nerubians would all be very much, oh my god, we're standing with the queen and we're all going to attack you kind of deal. But instead we get the sort of light and void where it isn't as plain as we think it is. So everyone thinks that the light is good and the void is bad. But we've seen in previous cinematics back in Legion, that the light is bad in its own way because it will basically have a goal and it will stop at nothing to achieve that goal. And it can do very bad things to get to that goal as well. So the Nerubians are the same. The ones who are obviously ascended and are with the Queen are bad, but we have ones that just want to be peaceful and sort of have the strength of their people through how it was previously, where they stood against the Black Empire and the old gods and stuff like that. So that's where you're making your connections and your questing. It seems like you're setting things up. And what you are essentially setting up is an attack on the raid, the palace raid. Because all of the questings like, oh my god, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to get, contacts, we need the general of the army to take back the militia effectively, that sort of thing. And it's very much a setup zone, I think. And this setup zone, it can lead into the next patches zone, or it can even lead into the raid itself. Now, there are other quests. There are other story quests, but I'm not going to be going over them today. And a lot of these campaign quests that are within the campaign after the leveling campaign are very good, and they do take place in Ajkahet. The Ajkahet part especially is incredibly informative and a massive sort of bombshell sort of moment. So I'm not going to be spoiling that here. That is a video for another time. Probably Friday, if I'm going to be honest. But other quests engaging. In my honest opinion, they're not engaging. Okay? Now, some of them are not. But you need the zone to get you engaged within the content. So, with Hallowfall, you obviously have humans and high elves. Okay? Very standard races that we've seen throughout Warcraft's history and have played as, or, seen throughout just questing, In Wrath, we saw Nerubians. Now, these Nerubians, apart from getting a couple quests from them for dungeon quests, we got nothing. We killed every single Nerubian that we came across without second thought. So we've always deemed them as something that is a bit more dangerous and hostile. And that's where I think my brain couldn't understand it. It's like, I should just be killing you. Like, we should just wipe you out, essentially. You are a hostile sort of species, which is a bit weird. But it's the way that we were sort of taught they were in Wrath of the Lich King. And kind of in Warcraft, like before World of Warcraft, when Arthas went to Northrend, and after he became evil and picked up Frostmourne, that's when he decided to make allies with Nerubians and stuff like that. So they've always been depicted as these bad guys. So the engagement is very tough to get into, especially when the zone itself is very damp and dark and murky and stuff like that. So it's not the most engaging zone, I will say that, but the quests do pick up towards the end, and especially in like campaign quests after the leveling campaign, they really do pick up, and it is amazing to see. Now, in terms of both of these zones, I would say they both have very good story. I would say Hallowfall and Ajkahet set themselves up for later uses. Okay, they set up a lot of later potential storylines. So, with regards to Arathi and Hallowfall, they're setting up the Empire of the Arathi and the Emperor and stuff like that. That can be in later expansions, that can be in later patches even, that sort of thing, where one patch we go to the Arathi sort of land and essentially we talk to the Emperor, and the Emperor's a bit of a dickhead, and we go, okay, we're going to punch you in the face until you help us, that sort of thing. And alternatively, the Nerubians, it's setting it up for where it's like, okay, we can maybe work with you in the future to help us defeat Xal'atath then instead. If we help you with your queen problem that you have currently, you need to help us with Xal'atath afterwards, you know, that sort of ally thing. So that's what that's setting up, these two zones. But at the same time, they are setting up something that is potentially going forward one of the better storylines. The Arathi one, especially. And the Ajkahet one is the prominent storyline at the moment with Xal'atath and Queen Ansarek. Okay, so they're the ones that are currently happening. The Arathi ones, please don't be surprised if you see them very soon in either a later patch or even in the next expansion, which is Midnight. So if you see them, I'm not sure if they're going to do a patch on them and it's just be like a little island that we go to, or if they're going to do an entire expansion and it's like, okay, the Emperor needs to be sort of overthrown. He's becoming a bit of a dictator or he's gone crazy, you know, whatever it might be. You know, then you could do that in the Midnight expansion, but I highly doubt it will be for the entire expansion. I think it will be probably a 0.2 patch, in my honest opinion, a 0.1 or 0.2 patch. And my guess, 0.2. That'll be my final guess. It will be 11.2. That we go and see the Arathi Emperor and we basically say, look, here's the shit that's going down, come help us, otherwise we'll punch you in the face until you help us, you know, that kind of deal. So I think that they're both very good in their own right, and they are some of the best zones that I've ever seen in WoW, and they deliver what they need to quite effectively. But that is where I will end it for this episode. Thank you all very much for listening. Do check out all of the socials down below, constant stuff happening over there, as well as the Etsy shop that has come up for the Pig and Whistle Tales. Multiple things from WoW are being printed over there, sent out and sold, etc. So do check it out if you're interested. But thank you all very much once again, and go a Valor friend. Goodbye all.